Scientia. The goal of Scimplify is to simplify science for everyone and to celebrate the most universal language of them all, which is science. We have with us today Anirban Sarkar of CNCI Kolkata and Dr. Tosha Ghoshal, Assistant Professor of English at California State University. Shubhra Priyadarshini, Chief Editor of Nature India, was due to join us, but due to some unavoidable circumstances, she could not make it today. Well, for a lot of us, the introduction to science and the wonderful world that it is was mostly through science fiction, be it Star Wars or Jurassic Park on the screen, or say A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in our hands. Science fiction has been a big part of our childhood. With this in mind, Biologically Speaking conducted Scientastic, Scientia, a science fiction writing competition for high school students to explore their creative sides and imagine the future scientifically. We got a large number of entries for this science fiction writing competition from all over the world. And we got a lot of young minds showing their talents and painting amazing pictures of the future with their words. The final 6 are, in alphabetical order, Aditi Karmakar of National Public School, Koramangala, India; Adrija Bhattacharjee, Satish Chandra Memorial School, India; Alvina Ishita, Carmel Senior Secondary School, India; Ishani Biswas, Poolsville High School, USA; Inya Dwivedi, Seeth Anandram Jaipuria School, India; and Ravi Girshad, ISB Bergen, Norway. Well, some of the finalists are here with us, and before we meet them and hear their stories, let us talk a bit about science communication. In this digital age, the world is at our fingertips, and almost all information is just a click away. Yet lack of scientific knowledge and fake news remain big problems, seen on numerous occasions during the recent pandemic. Science and its effective communication is of more importance than ever. Science needs to break out from the walls of research papers and scientific jargons and become more people-friendly, if I may call it. As science enthusiasts, it's not sufficient to just understand science. It is also essential to be able to communicate it well. So to tell us more, we have with us Anirban Sarkar. Anirban is an alumnus of the Benares Hindu University, Varanasi, and presently working as a doctoral fellow. In the Department of Immunoregulation and Immunodiagnostics, Chittaranjan National Cancer Institute, Kolkata, in the field of cancer immunology, immunotherapy, and immunometabolism. He has published a number of original research articles in international peer-reviewed journals. He got the first prize for Best Oral Presentation at International Conference on Immunology at SRM University, Tamil Nadu in 2018, and the first prize in oral GRF category in Annual Conference on Recent Trends in Cancer Research, Early Diagnosis, Prevention and Therapy at CNCI Kolkata in 2019. He got the third prize in the Popular Science Story Writing Competition for the story Guardian of the Malady in Augmenting Writing Skills for Articulating Research, or AVSAR, by DST, Government of India in 2019, and was awarded by Dr. Harshvardhan, the Honorable Minister of Science. So with that, I would like to welcome Anirban to our stage. And over to you.
Thank you, Krishnamurthy. Is this visible to everyone?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, I'm audible perfectly?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Myself, Anirban Sarkar, and today I am going to speak about the art of scientific storytelling. So before I start, I would like to make the difference between science fiction and science story writing. The main feature of science fiction is that it based on the imaginated futuristic technological and scientific advancements that are going to happen in the future, for say in 2040, in 2050, or something like that, like the teleportation, like the driverless car, self-driving car. Although the self-driving car is under the testing facilities in uh, India also. So these are like futuristic techniques or scientific advancements, like finding some new life in Mars, in Venus, or make a colony in Moon. That's the main theme of science fiction. That is based on purely imagination of futuristic scientific technological advancements. On the other hand, the science story, which or science communication based on the scientific evidence that is already happened, that has already happened or already established scientific facts, or the new findings and technological advancements that already takes place, that hardcore scientific knowledge that we already have in our mind or in our scientific community till date. So being keeping this mind, these two broad classifications, let's go to the uh, let's go to the next part. Why science story? Why do we need to make a science story, or why do we need to write the science story? The main function of the science story writing is to share the findings and excitement of science to the common people. The common people who are, maybe they are not from scientific background at all, they maybe are from arts background or some commerce background, and they may not have the degree of, for say, a doctoral degree, or they may not have the postgraduate degree at all. So they are very common people of this country, of this world. We need to appropriately introduce our scientific advancements or scientific findings to them, to increase their appreciation for science and as an useful way of understanding and navigating the modern world. So to increase their knowledge and understanding of their regarding the science, that is unnecessary. That's why we need to introduce more the scientific story, because a lot of scientific research is going on, and every week there are thousands of papers and thousands of original articles are coming in the journal, in the scientific community. Not all of them are they the common people, they couldn't relate their languages, that what does it mean, what a journal is actually going to tell us. So the scientists, they may or may not understand the facts, but the common people, they doesn't understand at all. So the science story writers or scientific communicators are like the bridge, like the link between the scientific world and the common people, and the society. Good. Okay. So the rest of the points are to why we should use science story, or why would we would write the science story, is to influence the people's opinions, behaviors, and policy preferences. We all know that during the past few years, we are going through a very bad situation all over the world, that is COVID-19. So if we don't know what the specific measurements, the measurements we need to take to tackle the disease, and what should we take if someone is COVID positive, what are the medications we need to take, what are the measurements we need to take to stop spreading the disease. And lot of research journals, lot of research articles are being published from that day to so on. They are still now publishing a lot of research papers. But do we all really understand those, the common people, do they really understand what these are? What does it mean that if a vaccine is going to be for say 85%, they're working in 85% patients, or some vaccines are not so efficient? What does it mean that is RNA virus, what it means to what vaccine, the vaccination, what type of vaccines they are getting, what is the difference between Covishield and Covaxin, what are the difference between the type of vaccines and the type of immunological responses they are getting. So these are the findings, these are the for recent scientific advancement regarding the COVID. And we need to tell the common people, the very common people of this world, what are the research and advancements is going on. So the gap between the scientific community and the modern and the normal, the society, the common people, the gap was there, a little gap was there, and this COVID-19 situation has showed us that the gap must be filled up by scientific community or some science communicators by the writings which could be understandable to common people. Thus, that's why the needs of science story is there for engaging the diverse group of the people. So, and another aspect is that we could get another perspective from there, the day-to-day problems or their problems, to seek solutions to the scientific community, so that the scientific community could get benefited from their opinion, from their problems, so that the scientific community could make a solution to the modern society. So with these, let's get into the next page. So before you make a scientific story, you need to have a very good background research. And if you are making a scientific, making a science fiction or a science story, the science story is based on purely on evidence-based research, and the science fiction is based on the futuristic technologies, including the new technologies that has already been there. So the background research and the read and read, that's the basic thing of any writing, whether it is scientific writing, whether it is any story writing, something like that. So find a good paper. You need to find a good paper first. Look at the work, what the good paper is trying to tell, that is original research article, whether this is entertaining, whether this is fascinating, important to the society, or controversial. What drives you actually, what makes you that this paper is going to be a good impact on the normal people. Ask yourself if anyone care about that paper, or the findings of that paper, or the link which they can predict in the paper. Be brutal about yourself. Okay, if the answer is no, that paper is not so entertaining, not so fascinating, and the people will may not make any interest in that, then move on. Then find another good paper. Okay, so if you find a good paper, then first you need to think is read it. The abstract of the paper will give you a barest essentials, about the research, about the findings. So this all will get from the abstract. So you need to read the entire research article. Then after the abstract, you need to read the introduction for context, and also read the discussion and conclusions part for the take-home messages. Check the methods, whether what methods they have used. People usually are, the common people usually are not very keen to what methods you are using, but they are very keen to what, so what, whether I am making a research or making a statement. So what, that part or that result ultimately, does it leads to benefit to the society, or does it leads to add to the existing scientific knowledge? That's the common people's most needed thing. Okay, they are less bother with the method. So you just check the methods, spend more time. You need to spend more time on results, and you need to check whether authors have omitted any data or their findings, their results are actually reflecting their original what they are um, what they are asking for. So remember, another thing, what happened in a petri dish won't necessarily happen in a person. We as a biological research, in the field of biological research, we always doesn't need to have any need to experiment all the things, all the drugs, all the experiments in human. So we have developed a variety of model organisms like Drosophila, like fish, like animals, rodent animals like mice, like rats, like chimps, like rabbits. So what happens if some extraordinary result is happening to petri dish for saying in vitro system, or in other rodents animal or any other model system, doesn't necessarily happen in human also. So just keep in mind that. So after you read the paper, you need to get the context, the background uh, of the what they are actually speaking about. That science actually builds on science. So you need to see, or you need to explore the scientific backgrounds of that research. What you need to know, what the previous studies that matter, that actually gives you the fuller picture, the scientific foundation with on which that existing story is going to be built. So that's the context. And next, you need to interview the author. So if someone is publishing a paper, then the first name in the publication will be a doctoral fellow or a postdoc fellow who has done most of the research. And the last author you will find that is probably the mentor or the guide. So you need to think about whether interview the first author or the guide or them both. So you need to interview them to give your story another color, another dimension. So get them to explain their results and justify their conclusions. So you can add the thrills, the emotions like challenges, excitement, success, collaborations. These are the other ingredients which could add another dimension to your story writing. So you need to interview them. Now, on a good day, uh, uh, guide, the mentor, they can tell you more, more specifically and more clearly, more transparently about their research. Okay, so that's why you need to interview the authors. Next, you need to get the other scientists' opinion. Send the papers to a handful of experts to check whether we can get the original research article have references at the end of their paper. So you can get the name of the scientists that are working on that field, on that particular field. So you can get their names and their contacts. So send few of them the paper and ask some simple questions and ask some comments on that story, on that research article. They will also give you another perspective, whether the research fits well in the scientific community, whether these results are really exciting or these are not so exciting, just average, whether this result is making a big leap to the scientific advancements, whether the result is just another piece of puzzle to the big picture of the existing scientific knowledge. So they can give you another dimension. And they also save you from writing a story that you wish you had never touched. So that's why you need to get the other scientist opinion also. And ultimately, you need to find the top line. What drew you to the paper in the first place? That is the excitement or the the X factor of that paper. And what stood out the most fascinating, amusing, or alarming or important factors about that paper, about the story. The story you should tell your readers might not be the story the authors of the paper want you to tell your readers. So keep in that mind. So background research is almost done from here. Now come to the story structure. How to structure your story, how to write the story in a good way. So average human have now an attention span shorter than a goldfish. That line you can find all over the internet throughout the days. The average attention span of human has decreased from 12 seconds to 8 seconds. So now we can consider that 8 seconds is the average attention span of human. So you need to grab the attention of an average human within 8 seconds. So you need to make your story, need to make your story in such a way that an average reader could be attracted. So the story you are writing, that is for entertainment purpose and not for homework. So you need to keep in that way. And you need to focus on the wider audience when deciding what to write about. Okay, so these are the things you need to keep in mind. The main part of every story, whether it is science fiction, whether it is journals, novels, anything, the main parts of the story is introduction, the body, and the conclusion part. So first thing is introduction. That introduction part invites an audience into the story, and then quickly introduce the story. Don't go to the scientific jargons or the difficult scientific terminologies. Just make it simple. Sometimes you had no option but to use some scientific terminologies. But if you are using any scientific terminologies, then try to explain that word in next 2 or 3 sentences. But don't oversimplify it. Just explain it simply in a simple language. So quickly introduce the story, set the mood, and arouse the readers and invite them to continue reading. So introduction part will give you the prior attention of an reader to read your story for the next step. The next step is the main body that provides the vital information, and it educates, entertains, and emotionally ties an audience to the subject. The body is usually what will happen, the background information of the story, whether the story is fitting in the existing scientific knowledge, or it is a big leap to the existing scientific knowledge. Does it have some remarkable feature, or it is just the one piece of puzzle to the big picture? That background information and that existing knowledge part, that will give that you can give into the body part. Then the scientific study and findings. The story should explain the importance of the work and how it impacts the world. So, as I said previously, the readers are very less bothered with the process, the procedure, or the methods which we used to make a scientific statement. So they are least bothered about the methods. They are only bothered, or they make it very entertaining to find out whether this could have any impact in the world, this could have any impact in the society or in the existing scientific advancements. That part is going to be into the body part, body section of your story. And next is the conclusion, that is potential wider impacts and future prospects. Now, all of you might have seen the Marvel movies. So every Marvel movie has a post-credit scene that is not necessarily not necessary for the existing storyline, but they can give the post-credit scene to to say what is going to be the next, what is going to be in their next movie. That is why the future prospects is a very important thing, and that is going to add another dimension to your story. So last part is the ending part. Ending part is very simple: wrap up the story, the whether until or you have what you have described, wrap up this from the background, from the result, from the discussion, from the future perspective. Just wrap up the story, just give a brief thing about that, and come back to the first paragraph again. Often you can end with a quotation or with a surprising climax. That is all about the ending part. So in a nutshell, for a scientific story or for science fiction, you need to find a research article that is interesting, that is entertaining or controversial. You need to study in detail. You need to check the backgrounds, and you need to making the story more focused, that is more relevant and meaningful to the audience, because you are writing for the audience, right? So the audience should find it meaningful and relevant, and you should use very simple language. Do not go to the scientific jargons, do not go for the critical scientific terminologies. If you need to introduce some scientific terminologies, then make it as simple as possible, and you might need to explain that scientific terminologies in next one or two sentences, and include the people and the process, the excitement, the collaboration, the failure, the achievements of the pupils who are involved in the process, in the discovery of the particular fact or the particular discovery, and finally enjoy it writing. Okay, so for this I am ending the presentation. One thing I need to show you, uh, when I have got the Ausser Prize, that I have got the third prize in augmenting writing skill and articulating research, I had a chance to interact with the President of India uh, and many other scientific giants. And you can see me here at the end row right side, uh, and all of them are science communicators. Department of Science and Technology, every year they made a program to get the prize of scientific communities. They every time, every year, uh, they appreciate or they recognize the contribution of scientific communicators in the field of science and communication, and give some very good amount of prize and recognition throughout the world. And so this is it, and these are my lab members in the lab which I am working presently. This is my sir, my guide at the first row, Dr. Othindranath Bodal, and I am presently working in here. Like I'm working on the cancer immunometabolism and cancer immunology. That's it. So thank you.
Krishna, I don't think you're audible.
Note, you are not audible.
Krishna, I don't think you're audible. No.
Just give us a second. I think Krishna's gonna be back in a moment. Thank you, Anirban, for giving us such a lively talk. We'll be back soon, hopefully. Just bear with us through this glitch. We're just trying to get Krishna back for the session. We're just gonna wait for a couple of minutes. If Krishna's, for whatever reason, if he's not able to connect back, I think we're gonna proceed as we have planned. Just gonna give it a couple of moments. Thank you all for joining us today for Scientastic. We are very happy about all of you joining our session. Krishna is back. Hopefully his sound is back too. Let's find out. Hi, Krishna. No, I think you're still. Can you connect through another device, Krishna? Do you have your phone handy? Can you connect through there and connect the audio?
I think Shorodev, if Rupkatha is around, let's move on account of time, and Krishna can rejoin later.
Yes, I think we can proceed with the next talk then.
Rupkatha, you're around?
I think the next talk was
Rupkatha is here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Am I audible? Okay.
No, you have to unmute now. Yes.
Am I?
Yes.
Yeah. Next we have with us Dr. Tosha Ghoshal, and she is a writer and a scholar of humanities with research interests in narratology, models of cognition, global Anglophone literature, multimodality, and arts across media. She was born in Kolkata and lives in Sacramento, USA, where she's an assistant professor of English at the California State University. Her experimental novella, Open Couplets, was published by the Yoda Press in 2017. Her short stories, essays, and poems appeared in Bustle, Lit Hub, Catapult, Entropy Magazine, The Hindu Blink, and she has also worked as a freelance reporter for the Times of India's Kolkata Mirror and has been a coordinator for the Statesman Voices. She was identified in September 2017 by the World Literature Today. Her novella Open Couplets was identified as one of the notable books of 2017. She received a doctoral degree in contemporary literature for her dissertation, Books with Bodies, Experimentality in Post-19 Multimodal Print Literature. Her first monograph builds on her doctoral research and explores how aesthetic treatments of thought and scientific models of cognition cross-pollinate, especially in the aftermath of cognitive revolution. It is a pleasure to have you here with us today, Dr. Ghoshal, and Could you please go ahead with your talk?
Thank you, Rupkatha. Good morning to those of you in India. For me, it's a night in California, and incidentally, we are also celebrating Diwali today. So belated happy Diwali to those who celebrate. Thanks to the team of Biologically Speaking, the organizers of this event, for inviting me to judge science fiction stories written by school students. Reading the submitted stories was like getting a peek into young minds, and I was thrilled by what I saw. The science of storytelling, which is the subject of my talk today, our conversation today, carries a lot of meaning for me. As you heard, I'm a professor of English in the US right now, but I first came to the US almost 10 years ago to study exactly this, the science of storytelling. The field I earned my PhD in is called narratology. It is the study of storytelling structures and the way these interact with human thought and perception. I specialize in something called cognitive narratology, which is concerned with how and why we tell stories, how stories help us make sense of our own experiences as well as our surroundings. The nexus of thought, experience, and stories is fundamental to human life. Psychologists Kenneth Gergen, Mary Gergen, and Jerome Bruner go so far as to say that our ideas about who we are, our very sense of selfhood, is nothing but a sophisticated narrative construction. So there is no self without stories. Stories are also repositories of practical everyday knowledge. They are records of our past, as well as anticipate the future. Science fiction and speculative fiction in particular are meaningful ways of future thinking. Because of how fundamental stories are to our sense of self and our cultures, we all also have intuitive understandings of good and bad stories. What makes a story work, why we care about certain stories and do not care about certain stories. What I'm trying to say is that we all may not have formally studied narratology, but at an intuitive level, we all know something of the science of storytelling. I was interested in how and why we tell stories long before I knew of the existence of a field of research called narratology. Studying narratology, however, I have attained a more formalized vocabulary and systematic understanding of stories. And I will share a few insights with you today, especially as it pertains to the art of scientific storytelling. And some of these will nicely overlap with what Anirban Sarkar was telling us moments ago. And though much of my comments will address fiction and creative writing, the focus of our session, I want to note that the art of scientific storytelling is much broader than that. There is first and foremost the story of science itself as disciplines and modes of inquiry, how these came to be, the history of science and scientific ideas. Then scientific thought experiments also involved stories. For example, Albert Einstein's discussion of moving trains and clocks moving along with them, that is, along with the moving trains, has a very basic narrative structure. If I were to use a very modern term, we could even call it a piece of flash fiction. The scientist Jagadish Chandra Bose drew on his own research interest to write a story called Niruddeshir Kahini in Bengali. In English, it's translated as The Story of the Missing. The story drew on research published in the Scientific American and anticipates something like the butterfly effect. The story involves thought experiment, and thought experiment involves stories. However, not all stories are equally effective. How stories are told about urgent phenomena to a large extent determines public response to the phenomena. Whether it is the COVID-19 pandemic right now or climate change, for phenomena that call for public action and yet unfold at a scale that is too large for the public to grasp, storytelling can play an important role as a mediator. For example, environmental and social psychologist Robert Gifford notes that psychological barriers currently hinder the behavioral choices that would facilitate mitigation, adaptation, and environmental sustainability. He argues that removing these barriers is as crucial as changing the climate-averse infrastructure. And this is where stories can play a role. Given that stories are fundamental instruments for changing how people think, present-day authors concerned with climate crisis, both in fiction and non-fictional contexts, have to invent new storytelling structures to represent a phenomena that defies ordinary frames of comprehension. And this is already happening. Literary scholar Marco Caracciolo notes that there is a renewed emphasis on analogical relations at micro and macro levels of narrative form today. Stories will develop and sustain metaphors throughout to bring down abstract concepts into human scale experience. Science fiction, simultaneously a subgenre of literary writing, as well as a subgenre of science communication, has been around for a while. In the Western world, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is often considered the first science fiction novel. Of course, Gothic writing and utopic and dystopic narratives also contained elements that overlap with Shelley's Frankenstein. There's also the tradition of fantastic tales across various cultures, which has some similarities with science fiction. However, the term science fiction, or the abbreviated term we often use, sci-fi, is a more recent coinage. It first became popular in the mid-1940s, thanks to the popularity of certain short stories printed in pulp magazines in mostly Western countries like the US. 21st century science fiction shares a lot of traits with sci-fi from back in the day. Sci-fi plots even today center on problem solution patterns. Technological and/or social innovations serve as the backdrop, as well as become a problem to solve. Imagined technologies often end up operating as a mechanical plot device to engineer a certain kind of ending. It can be climactic, explosive, revelatory. Many of us are familiar with the names of early sci-fi writers like H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, Isaac Asimov, among others. Some of us have read them. However, truth be told, the vast majority of the population today get their first exposure to science fiction not through the medium of verbal arts, that is stories that we read, but through films. In fact, my own earliest acquaintance with sci-fi happened through the 1996 film Independence Day, in which aliens launch a worldwide attack on human populations. The film was aligned with a general explosion of Mars novels and accompanying interest in extraterrestrial life at the time. I remember Independence Day's visual brilliance, but I truly fell in love with the genre of science fiction after watching Matrix. I had no idea then that the world of Matrix was essentially adapting a novel that had been published several years earlier. This novel was William Gibson's The Neuromancer. I recount my personal relationship with the genre of science fiction because it is similar to that of many other audiences and writers of sci-fi today. Since a lot of writers intending to work in the genre of science fiction come to it by way of films, they remain susceptible to particular trappings. Films are an audiovisual media and combine the advantages of stillness inherent to photography and movement that is characteristic of verbal arts. So films are able to establish a rich technological backdrop, imaginative setting, tone, texture of the imagined world in a matter of seconds. They are also able to create narrative tension while establishing this setting. This is simply not possible in creative writing. Language is a temporal medium. It builds setting word by word over the course of several sentences. Writers of sci-fi, in their attempts to emulate cinema, especially early in their writing careers, spend first several words and sentences and sometimes paragraphs in building a rich imaginative world. They feel compelled to let their readers know at the very outset all the different ways in which the world of their making is different from the one we live in. The problem, however, is that what grabs the interest of readers or listeners of stories is not setting, however fantastic or eccentric this setting is, but action. When we read stories, we want to know not only what happens next, but what happens next to one or more characters. And I use the term character broadly here to denote anyone with capacity for action or agency. This could be a human figure, a replicant, or whatever. Readers are typically pulled in by action. Of course, this action is taking place in a world. Setting and circumstances matter, but we need to know of these settings or circumstances as they become relevant for the character. Readers typically follow the principle of minimal departure, or what is also known as the reality principle, which simply means that when we start to read a story, including science fiction, we start with the assumption that the fictional world resembles the actual world, the world we are familiar with, until we are told otherwise. This means that if we start a story with action, however rudimentary this action is, readers will not assume that this action is taking place in a vacuum. Instead, readers will fill the gaps and assume that it is taking place in a world similar to ours. And then when the time comes and the writer tells us that no, the world in which the action taking place is different in a particular way, we are surprised. And the surprise makes us doubly concerned for the character. We become further absorbed in trying to figure out what will happen to the character. If, on the other hand, the story began with a catalog of all the ways the imagined world is different, readers would lose attention, wondering, why should I care about these differences? How much of these do I have to remember? Readers are pragmatic when it comes to interacting with information. We say we get lost in the details because we don't want to remember what is not relevant. The science of storytelling is thus, at one level, simply the science of holding and manipulating attention. Take, for instance, these sentences from a story, and I'm quoting. If the system hadn't stalled, Antar would never have guessed that the scrap of paper on his screen was the remnant of an ID card. It looked as though it had been rescued from a fire. The plastic laminate had warped and melted along the edges. The lettering was mostly illegible, but a 4-inch metal chain had somehow stayed attached to the card. It was the chain that tripped the system. End quote. The sentences tap into our sense of the familiar. We know that, we know what ID cards look like and can easily imagine their appearance. We are given the description of the ID card also in the context of something that has already happened. A system, we still don't know what kind of a system it is, but we know that the system has tripped. We care about the system because a character, Antar, we were introduced to him in the first sentence, seems to care about the system. We follow his lead. In the next paragraph, we are told that the system stopped because it couldn't file the ID card, and it will be several pages before we learn that the world of the story is quite different from the world we live in, even though there are several things that are familiar to us. In the world of the story, people can teleport. The novel calls this technology of interpersonal transference. In the world of the story, there are underground science movements, alternate histories of scientific discoveries are available. Everything I've said so far, and quoted, this is coming from Amitav Ghoshal's science fiction novel, The Calcutta Chromosome. The Calcutta Chromosome is the only novel by an Indian to have won the prestigious Arthur C. Clarke Award given to best science fiction writing. The Calcutta Chromosome is an outstanding work of science fiction, not only because of the gradual pace in which it builds its world, but also because of the purposiveness of this world construction. A work of fiction and imagination, The Calcutta Chromosome is also a critical exploration of colonial knowledge, practices of the Western scientific community that for a long time erased the agency and contributions of people from countries like India and Egypt. Through the Calcutta chromosome, Ghosh is raising questions about scientific knowledge and power relations. The Euro-American imposition of particular frameworks of knowledge, the emphasis on total knowability to which colonized people were subjected, Ghosh alludes to these issues, while he's also alluding to texts and articles on malariology, data science, Gnosticism. So he's ultimately writing a science fiction novel to persuade us into considering the cultural and political contexts within which scientific knowledge is produced, making us think about its possibilities and limits. And this is really important to understand about storytelling. It is a form of purposive communication. This is not to say that stories do or should boil down to a simple message. Best stories don't. But in the telling of a story, its purpose has to be encoded. This is what compels a reader to attend to the story in the first place. And this is true of rich, compelling science fiction written not only in English, as Ghosh's novel is, but also those written in many, many other languages across the world, including various regional languages in South Asia. Mimi Mondal has written a two-part history of science fiction from South Asia. And Mimi Mondal says science fiction appeared in the mid-19th century in South Asia. And it appeared not only in English, but also in Bengali, Urdu, and Tamil, among other languages. Rokia Sakhawat Hussein's Sultana's Dream, written in Bengali, for instance, presents us a utopia run by women to make us think about gender roles and gendered spaces. Simply put, good science fiction, like all great works of fiction, is anchored in social and cultural struggles. One of the most important sci-fi writers today, Ted Chiang, says that people often come to him and say, well, I like what you write, but it's not really science fiction. By the way, if you have not read Chiang, you totally should. Some of you may be familiar with a movie that was adapted from his short story called Arrival. So Chiang says that the popularity of Star Wars, apologies to Star Wars fans, but Chiang says that the popularity of Star Wars has made the genre of science fiction synonymous with, and I quote, adventure stories dressed up with lasers. But as Usman T. Malik says, extrapolating from Chiang, science fiction includes the word science for a reason. It is supposed to be largely about exploring the boundaries of knowledge. So the science of storytelling is the science of recognizing and pushing boundaries of the way we think, perceive, and know. Well, thank you for listening. That will be all from me.
Thank you, Dr. Ghoshal. That was a wonderful talk. And I hope the listeners here, the budding writers have learned a lot from that talk. It's lovely to hear you talk about Rokeya Sakhawat Hussain and Sultana's Dream. I read that story a few days ago, and I was thinking, why haven't I read this before? So amazing story it is. The next speaker, she was going to be here, Shubhra Priyadarshini, and she couldn't be here with us today. She has sent us a lovely video message. So a little about her. Shubhra Priyadarshini is an award-winning science journalist and is currently the editor of Nature Publishing Group's India portal. She has been keenly following the evolving science, research, and innovation climate in Asia through the last couple of decades. She has been a British Chevening Scholar, a Robert Bosch Fellow, and an IREX UNESCO Fellow, and a Kavli Prize Media Scholarship Awardee. She received the BBC World Service Trust Award for her coverage of the vanishing islands of Sundarbans in the Bay of Bengal, and the PANOS South Asia Media Excellence Award for her incisive coverage of climate change issues. She won acclaim in India for her coverage of the Orissa super cyclone in 1999 and the Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004. Previously, she has worked as a journalist with major Indian dailies, The Times of India, The Indian Express, The Asian Age. She launched Nature India in 2007, where she serves as a chief editor presently. Now it's in its 14th year of operation, and Nature India has become one of the largest platforms of science news in India. We are going to hear a video message that she has so kindly sent us.
Hello everyone. Apologies that I can't be there in person today as planned, but I've seen your entries and I'm quite taken by the potential you all have. I thought we can use today's time to talk a little bit more about storytelling. We all love stories, and the best stories we remember are many times the easiest ones, without too much complexity, without hundreds of twists and turns, without jumbling our minds up, or using words or analogies or scenarios that are tough for our heads to wrap themselves around. Well, there's a place under the sun for that kind of stories too, but close your eyes and think of just one story that will always enamor you. I can bet it is an easygoing, breezily narrated, simple story. What does that tell you? It tells you that a simple narrative is many times the best to comprehend. Very complex things can be explained, tough concepts. They can be explained, conveyed in a very simple manner, using words and phrases minimally and to effect. How many of us know the fresh fish sold here story? For those who don't, let me narrate it for you. We were told this story by one of our professors in journalism school to explain how words work and how we can use just a few words to convey so much meaning. So there was once a fish seller who was selling fish in a local market. There was a board next to his fish which said, "Fresh fish sold here." A man came up to him and said, "Obviously you are selling fresh fish, and otherwise everyone could smell it from a mile. It would be rotten and everybody can make it out. So you need not say fresh fish sold here." So the man went up to the board and rubbed out the fresh bit from the fresh fish sold here. A woman came up next to him and said, "What else do you think you're doing sitting in a market? You'll obviously sell this." So the man went off and rubbed off the sold bit. Another guy came up and said, "Here, where else will you be selling?" So the man rubbed off here as well. And then a boy came and said, "Mister, I can smell your fish from a mile away. Why do you need to even write fish?" And there you go. Many times you don't even need words to explain things, right? So minimal use of words to convey the maximum meaning would be one great way of storytelling. Okay, so there's also a difference between fiction and non-fiction writing, non-fiction stories, right? And all of you know what it is. However, the abiding principle of great storytelling remains the same: accuracy, brevity, and clarity. We call them the ABC of storytelling. Even in a fiction story, you would want to respect the intelligence of your readers, your audiences, by being rooted in facts. So, how accurate you are in your narration, how brief you are in getting to the point, of course, that doesn't apply if you're writing a novel, and how clearly you can convey your thoughts. These are the three main things that you need to look out for when writing or narrating a great story. So, congratulations to all the winners and all participants, and happy storytelling, everyone.
Okay, Shubhra, thank you for that wonderful and encouraging talk. I would now ask Krishna to please take over.
Yeah, if you can hear me, then yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Sorry for the issues before. Anyway, so thank you so much to all the judges for those wonderful and insightful talks. I'm pretty sure the students have learned a lot. Everyone has learned a lot. So with that, let's get to the stars of our show. Let's welcome the finalists of Scientastic Spinner Science. I'll request them one by one to just introduce themselves and present their wonderful stories to us. We'll start off with Aditi Karmakar. Aditi, if you can hear us.
Yes.
Yeah, please go ahead and introduce yourself and read your story for us.
Hi, my name is Aditi Karmakar. I'm in grade 9, and this is my story. Through the eyes of Doctor Strange, 2041, the world 2 decades from today, was similar in many ways, yet different in many more. I realized this as I walked through its weaving lanes and wondered at its development. All around me were towering buildings, sometimes so high the last floor couldn't be seen. Making my way through its streets, I was able to see the most intriguing variations in lifestyle. All around me, people wore clothes of flashy colors. Almost everyone, both men and women, wore loose and baggy trousers paired with neon colored shirts. But, without a doubt, the most incredible advancements were the scientific feats achieved by man. I was walking along a footpath, looking up at the great buildings, when from behind me, a tiny three-wheeled vehicle sped past, almost knocking me off my feet. It seemed that people no longer walked. They traveled everywhere by these vehicles that allowed you to move faster and more safely. The automobile was controlled by a sophisticated device attached to it that changed its speed and direction. These narrow vehicles were as large as motorbikes and moved smoothly but almost noiselessly. I believe it was the exhaustion of fossil fuels that induced humans to make this device, which ran on very little electricity. I also noticed that the people weren't actually driving the vehicles, they were self driving. Phone calls seem to be a thing of the past. The way to interact with people was through a modest looking device that enabled you to see and speak to a person without having to look at a screen. On clicking a button, a 3-dimensional holographic video would be projected at eye level, and the size, quality, and placement of the image could be adjusted as needed. The device was not more than an inch in length and could even be fastened on a wristwatch. Most people I saw were using this device to talk to others while sitting in their self driving vehicles. Another fascinating advancement was food pills, an entire meal in less than a minute. Nourishing and available to almost all, these pills were favored by many over long meals. I saw many stores selling them in scores of flavors and colors. An interesting one was colored a brilliant blue and named Blueberry Pie. I was tempted to try it and took out my purse, but I quickly changed my mind on seeing the outrageous price. Later, when I compared it with the prices of ordinary items, It became evident the prices weren't as outrageous as I thought. I walked on, drawing queer looks due to my anachronistic attire. However, I ignored them, and looking ahead, I saw a prominent building with people streaming in and out on their three-wheeled vehicles. Intrigued, I decided to enter. On reaching the foyer, I was astounded at the intricate designs on the windows and ceiling. Walking through the expansive lobby, I saw around a dozen men and women lined up before a wall, which had narrow slots with artificial voices emanating from them. The people would ask the automated voice questions and would receive an answer in no time. I saw papers, dossiers, and other records being exchanged through those slots as well. As I realized I was nearing the end of my remarkable expedition, I decided to look beyond the material differences and observe the people. Other than their showy clothes, they appeared little changed externally, but the world seemed noticeably improved. More people had access to these devices, and the food pearls had almost obliterated hunger. Poverty had diminished greatly, and the future was brighter than I had anticipated. To an extent, these marvelous inventions had established a sense of equality in the people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aditi. That was a fantastic story and you presented it beautifully. Let's move on to our next finalist. May I invite Adrija Bhattacharya.
Good morning, everyone. I am Adrija Bhattacharya and I am a student of class 9. I am 14 years old and I am very glad to be a part of this event today. The name of my story is A Stranger in a Strange City. So I would like to start my story. I woke up with a headache. Sitting up, I looked outside the window only to see something that blew my wits out. That did not look like my neighborhood. It did not even look like I was in India. It was as if I had been transported somewhere else. My room was not the same. Maybe I was hallucinating. Suddenly, I noticed the calendar across the room and my eyes widened. The year was written in bold letters, 2041. Surely it couldn't be true. It was a joke. Laughing to myself, I went downstairs calling for my mother. But there was no one. I was alone in a big house. A noise startled me as I found a phone which presumably was mine. It was saved as Mom. That's when I panicked. I rushed towards the nearest mirror and found my face middle aged. Was this really me? Did I really get transported into the future? And how was I going to go back? Weirded out and frustrated, I put on the nearest clothes I could find, the purse, phone, and keys, and went out. But then, the moment I opened the door and looked outside, I swear I could sit down on the ground by what I saw in front of me. There were huge skyscrapers in front of me, but what was strange was that there were trees coming out from the buildings. It looked hauntingly beautiful. The buildings were not abandoned as I had thought. The street was busy as ever, and many people were entering the buildings and coming out. One of the buildings had solar power written on it. Coming to think of it, each house or building I had passed had these huge solar panels on their roofs. What was more fascinating was the city looked so modern, yet so green. The passers-by looked happy and not gloomy. People's faces gleamed more than I had ever seen before. But there was something that caught my eye more than ever. Half of the passers-by didn't look human. There was something robotic about them. The way they walked, talked, and made eye contact. It made me feel uncomfortable, so I kept on walking when I noticed my mobile. The screen was extremely slim, and when I tried to unlock it, a holographic screen with a woman in front of it appeared, startling me and making me flinch. The woman started talking suddenly, and I fumbled over my mobile to turn it off. I started walking and sat down under the shade of a tree. Bewildered by what had happened since the morning, I tried to unlock my phone once again. The holographic screen appeared with the woman. Hi, You have 5 texts from John. Would you like to hear some news? A voice said. A blue aura spread as I spoke. Yes, some morning news wouldn't hurt to hear about. Thank you. Some burning morning news would be civilization on Mars is in progress. The artificial atmosphere has already been created. 40% of employees have turned out to be AI in most corporate sectors of the world. An Indian restaurant launches robot waiters after Japan, USA, and other countries. Would you like me to continue further? Declining the offer, I stood up. I felt a sharp pain in my back, which was probably because I was old. Again walking, I came across a mid-level escalator, which quite fascinated me. Not having the energy to walk anymore, I got on the escalator when I saw a toddler with her mum beside me. The toddler had an ice cream in her hand, which was melting due to the heat outside. What shocked me after was that the mom taking out something like a taser and pointing it towards the ice cream, and the ice cream froze. The toddler giggled and dug into the ice cream once again. Confused, I looked to my other side and saw a park where children ran around giggling, falling down, crying, and again getting up. I got off near a pastel-colored building and saw that the security guards of the building were robots. There were big screens all around in the strange city, some saying that the global warming rates had gone down drastically and that the earth was healing. Some saying that civilization on Mars would have to take place because of humans' age-old curiosity and the growing rate of robots. I started walking towards home and bought some food on the way. It was growing dark, and I saw big lights brighten up. Some text bubbles had positive quotes which would float into the sky and disappear, making the passers-by smile and look up at the stars. Is the world really going to be like this when I grow old? I thought as I entered the house. Did our generation really heal the earth? I smiled to myself as I flopped into bed, and before I knew it, I dozed off. The tuneless loud alarm sound made me jump and almost fall out of bed. I felt lighter than before. Stumbling out of bed, I looked out of the window and saw my old neighborhood again. I rushed in front of the mirror and saw my 14-year-old self again. So it was all a dream then, I thought, both relieved and sad. But then I felt a sharp pain on my back while a really slim phone lay on the far corner of the messy bed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrija. That was fantastic. We move on to our next finalist, Elvina Yashita JS, if you can hear me. Elvina, if you can hear me, please unmute yourself. I guess she can't. Yeah, you can. Hi. Yeah.
I'm Elvina Yashita. I'm 16 years old and
Go on.
am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible now. Go on.
My story begins with the character Janus Cruz, a Trisnarian, had been feeling bad for some time, but today was even worse. The crawling sensation in his stomach made him think of the incident that happened in the Astro station. As usual, he went to the workstation at 10 in the morning. Working as a project leader, he failed in monitoring his team members and reaching the goal. Change in scope due to poor planning was the main cause for the failure of the project, which resulted in demotion in rank. He was appointed as a project coordinator to work in a junior project under the direct supervision of the project manager. After continuous demotion, he worked as a lab assistant, a classic dirty job of cleaning out the laboratory refrigerator and glassware. That very morning, while carrying the pipettes and volumetric flasks for cleaning, his foot slipped and everything fell off his hand. All the left residue was sprinkled all over the floor. Criticism is never fun or easy to hear from your boss. Without knowing how to respond to this insulting or disheartening criticism, grievingly, he returned home that evening. Abstraining from food, no one to console him, he went to sleep with a heavy heart, slept late and woke up grouchy. Rubbing his eyes, he gazed the clock, astonished and dumbstruck. He jumped out of his bed. The clock struck 11:40. It is dawn or dark. He was puzzled. The phone bell rang. It was Mr. Dominic, his childhood friend and a colleague. Hey, Janice, where are you? Do you know what's going on? What happened, Dominic? Something curious. Sun has not risen. Come to the station soon. Shortly, Janice started to the station. The station was totally muddled. No one knew what was going on and what to do. Communication was going on. The curator, astrophysicist, meteorologist, research scientist, climatologist, all were gathered together. What happened, Dominic? Uranus has taken off from its orbit. It's hurtling to a speed of around 1,000 kilometers per second. Because of this unexpectedly fast speed, we'd only have about 30 days left on this planet. At first, it looked like our moon had found itself a stellar planet. But then we understood something much bigger. It's heading our way. But how does this happen? No idea, Janus. Uranus has brought all its 27 moons along for the ride, and those moons would be hitting the Earth from all sides. Suddenly, volcanoes started erupting uncontrollably, and tremendous earthquakes got in on the act, destroying Earth from the inside. Everyone was worried. Immediate action had to be taken. Nobody could find a solution to the problem. Janus entered the convocation room. Sir, may I come in? Stay out, Janus, the director yelled. Sir, please give me 5 minutes. I have something to say. Everything started laughing. Get out, Janus, the curator cried. Don't waste our time. The scientist said, let him speak. Janus began his speech. I have a solution. As the planet Uranus is coming to the Jupiter's orbit of the asteroid can be changed to the Jupiter's massive gravity by the close encounters with Mars or other objects. We can knock the asteroids out the main belt and hurl them across the orbits of other planets. For example, Mars, though the gravitational force can pull the asteroid, while the Uranus crosses the Jupiter, it will hit the asteroid. The gravitational interaction can kick one of the planets very hard, either sending it into the sun or out of the solar system. It is witless, said Rick, the senior astronaut. But other scientists were entirely contented, so the plan was clear. But who's going to complete this mission? Said Lewis. All the other revoked. At last, Janus compiled and the mission was marshaled. It took about 5 days to promote the mission. On the day launching the spaceship, everybody wished Janus to come back with a great success. Everything went on as planned up to that point. Janus completed his mission by hitting the Uranus with a great asteroid, and the planet Uranus hurled across the orbit of Mars. The crew landed safely to the Earth through parachutes. Our Earth was safe now. Entire team was cheered up with a great applause. Suddenly, phone bell rang. Janus started from the D. Dominic, what happened, Janus? Why didn't you come to the station? Is everything good? Yes, Dominic, everything is fine. I'll be there in an hour. Janus settled into the routine of the work, the same snap, the same rebuff.
Thank you so much, Elvina. Won't that make an amazing movie? So With that, let's move on to our next finalist. May I invite Inya Dwivedi? You can hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Go ahead. The stage is all yours.
Very good morning to one and all present here. I am Minya Devedi, a 9th grader from Setha Nandram Jaipriya School, Kanpur. Let's now begin with my story, Fabled. The gentle turning of the wheels of the abstract concept of time seems pointless to you now. Summer and winter keep changing form, and before you know it, blooming sunlight and lovely flowers are signifying a summer inkling again. Hirayat is engulfing you like the tendrils coiling around your spacecraft. Being home seems all the more painful knowing that your version of home does not exist anymore. It's your second visit to Earth in 10 Milky Way years, which equals 20 Earth years now, and humanity's original home seems utopian now. You wonder if the Earth is ready to become home again, but more importantly, whether humanity is eligible to call it home again. You squander through the debris of what once used to be the Big Apple's Times Square, marking chalk all over the abandoned stone from all those years ago, announcing existence, shooting a shot you knew did not exist. You recount how the antimatter explosion had been the last straw, how even the idea of survival on this beautiful planet had become utopian within a month after that horrific accident. New York had been running smoothly on antimatter, dangerous antimatter, marching like death drums through carefully constructed wires all over the city. Then it had seemed like humanity's greatest achievement, even greater than the hydro-powered vehicles. A second was all it took for it to blow New York away. A boom, and the bustling metropolis never spoke again. The world was shook, but like always, this race found a way to survive. Hydro-powered jets could be seen shooting across the sky for months on end, hoping and hoping for the survival of their loved ones. Soon, the people rose up in revolt. You could hardly have imagined the discoveries that were incited by this grief. Mechanical jets, stress relievers, and a cost-friendly seawater purifier. It was as if the world had finally come together to celebrate our planet, albeit it required a major shock for this to happen. Progress's downward spiral was facing upwards again. The world was happy. Then, people found a better planet and shifted, as if it was that easy to leave everything behind. You flew to the new Earth, and 20 years later, home seems like utopia now. As humanity's official scientific explorer, it's your duty to report the Earth's ongoings to your higher officials regularly. Nothing seems unusual now. The Earth is blooming, and it's almost time for you to leave. A small, unusual creature comes skittering to you before you can order takeoff. It has big, beady eyes, a human face, and somewhat of a cat's body. It appears to be cute. You're the Earth's originals, the fabled ones, the ones they tell me came to the verge of destroying this beauty, it says. You don't have any words left to reply. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Inya. What a beautiful story and wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. Let's move on to our next finalist, the last one for the day. We have Ravi Rilshat all the way from Norway. Ravi, can you hear us?
Hello. Yeah.
Hi. Go ahead.
So I'm Ravi. I'm 14 years old. I'm in 9th grade in the international school here. All right. So my piece is called Modernized Hell. I wrote it a while ago and I thought it sort of fit the description. so I just submitted it. All right, here we go. Hurtling myself through narrow alleyways and the monochromatic side paths, I was trying to escape the belligerent nanobots, released from Factor, a leading brand in robotics. The dilapidated door hung, seemingly floating, off to one side in the barricaded streets. I felt myself being sucked in, closer and closer, when suddenly, wham! I woke up drearily. For a few moments, I just stared ahead into a never-ending spiral of color. A vortex, maybe. Looking around, I noticed colossal mechanisms towering above me and prodigious, iridescent streams hurtling past. Looming like a deadly nightmare, I saw a very quickly approaching floor, the floor that was at the bottom of this vortex, and I caught myself muttering, "Oh no, not again." Crack! I look around at the 2-meter deep crater I created, although I was uninjured. Looking bewilderedly around me, I noticed a monochrome-like color scheme. However, it included modern silvers, electric blues, and whites mixed with megalithic figurines, extraordinary arches, and medieval turrets. Glinting like captured shards of moonlight, 3 mirrors, directly to my right, caught my eye. Their beautifully sculpted edges were very appealing. However, what I then saw in the mirrors was not. Terrorized, I did a double take on what I saw. 3 versions of me, one stuck in the past, one just like me but with hazy white eyes, and one with a black grave reading my name in golden letters. Horrified, I staggered backwards in pure shock of what I had just witnessed. Turning around, I hoped to go back through the kaleidoscopic, revolving vortex. Instead, a wall engraved with strange alien script rushed to meet me. A door suddenly appeared, engulfed in a blue aura, the alien scripts glowing blood red. A quick turn back to the mirrors was all that was needed to transport me to a completely different part of this modernized hell. As I turned cautiously back to where the door was, there now stood 2, with a rotating, small golden orb eerily suspended in mid-air between them. It was about the size of a tennis ball. A shimmering red note hung precariously underneath it. The note read, "Touch me to choose your fate. One door, Lux Eterna, the eternal light, and one door, the Abyssia Eterna, the eternal abyss. When you touch me, you will be transported into one of them, forever." Hesitantly, I started to reach for the golden orb, an overpowering force pulling me towards it, when I heard a strange sound from behind. I froze and swiveled around vigilantly. A long corridor stretched endlessly in front of me. A strange cloaked figure strode purposefully towards me, although she was still approximately a mile away. I blinked for a split second, and the cloaked figure was suddenly nose to nose with me. Before I could push away, she breathed, "I am your shadow." Bam! I blacked out just as I saw her horrifying claws, teeth, but most of all, her hazy white eyes. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Ravi. That was amazing. And boy, did you present it well.
Thank you.
So with that, all our panelists who are present here have presented. And thank you so much, all of you. All brilliant, creative stories, and the way you're presenting it. Well, this was what we were essentially discussing, right? Science communication, having thoughts and presenting them beautifully. We can almost say that indeed our future is in safe hands. Now, with that, we have come to the final bit of our program. Now, may I invite our judges, Anirban and Tosha, to come along and we'll have the prizes announced. First, may I invite Anirban to announce the runner-up, the second prize for this event. Anirban?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. So the runner-up, the second prize for this event goes to Inia Divedi.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Congrats, Inia.
Congratulations.
Well deserved.
Thank you. Thank you.
So yeah, Inia, tell me, I mean, what was the thought process behind the story? Or
The thought process behind this story was that progress could go down a downward spiral, that progress could be harmful if not controlled, if not countered with equally supportive measures to counter its bad effects. And this story is post-apocalyptic, like you all would have seen. And it means to portray that even if the damage has been done, we can repair it, we can change, and things can turn happy again.
thank you so much. Well done, congrats. And now may I invite Tosha to announce the winner of Scientastic Spin Your Science Yarn. Over to you.
It's my pleasure to announce the winner for the story writing competition. And the winner is Audrija Bhattacharjee. Congratulations, Audrija.
Thank you, ma'am.
Audrija, congrats once again from the entire team. Well done. Tell us what was the thinking behind this story and how you wrote it. Sorry.
Actually, it was a very last minute story, but what I thought was that due to the pandemic we have outside in the world, there is so much negativity outside. So I thought what the future must be, it should be positive and in some way so that we can relate with it. And I also thought that the story should be simple, as Tosha ma'am had told us before. The thought process should be simple and the writing should be simple so that the readers can relate with it. So I think I just thought about it that the things which we have, it should just get modern, and in some ways it should help our nature as well as us. So in that way only I have written the story, and I'm very glad that to be a part of this event today.
Thank you so much. And not just these two, but all the finalists and all the participants, in fact, who submitted their entries. It was a wonderful experience reading your stories and learning from them. And I'm pretty sure it must have been a learning experience for you as well, writing these stories and then listening to our judges. And to be very honest, that is the essence of any competition or any science. With that, I would request Tosha Ghoshal to kindly give some closing remarks for the fantastic event, and over to you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed being part of this panel. There were so many overlaps between what each of us who judged the story said, and you could see those overlaps even in our selection of winners, I suppose. And I was very, very happy to listen to the writers of the stories read the stories, because in their voice, in the places where they paused and what they emphasized, you get a whole new way of looking at the story. So that was fantastic. And congratulations to Biologically Speaking for pulling off this wonderful, wonderful event. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Anirban Sarkar, if you have some closing remarks. Anirban, are you around?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. This has been a great session and I have enjoyed this thoroughly. And I specifically tell that the students, the storytelling part was the most fantastic part. And this is my first this kind of participation. I am the first to participate in these kind of conferences. So this was a very, very nice experience, and the students might get some positive things from here, I think they can get the true essence of this program, of this session, and that's all we need. That's all we require. That is the ultimate goal of this session. So thank you for all of this.
Thank you to all our finalists and all judges for your time and this wonderful event. May I request all the finalists to kindly turn on their cameras so that we can have a group photo to finish it off. All you finalists with our judges. The rest of you, Elvina. All the finalists who are here, it would be great if you can turn on your cameras just for a group photo. They're done. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful session. It was wonderful interacting with all of you. Thank you so much. Keep on writing and keep on growing. To all our finalists, to our judges, Anirban, Tosha, and Shubhra, who could not be here. Thank you so much for your time, for judging and being here, and your words of motivation. It was really, really helpful for the students, I hope. And thanks again for being a part of this event. Thank you.
Thank you.
With this, we come to the end of this event. We have a lunch break now. We'll meet after that for a lot more exciting sessions are coming up today. So see you then.